No matter where you are in the state of Utah right now watching the county seat, you are probably no more than an hour and a half away from an airport. Hi, I'm Chad Booth. Today on the county seat, we're going to take a look at Utah's airport system and how important it is to our health, our safety, our welfare, our transportation, our recreation, and to just plain have fun. No pun intended with the plane. So let's start by taking a look at Utah's airport system by the numbers. The state of Utah has 46 public airports within its boundaries. 8 of them are commercial airports. Utah's airports are home to some 1,700 aircraft, and our runways accommodate 1.3 million takeoffs and landings every year. During the course of a year, 18.6 million people will take off from Utah runways, along with 476 million pounds of cargo. Just the general aviation airports, spread out across suburban and rural Utah, employ nearly 4,000 people in primary or secondary jobs. So, who uses your local community airport?
You know, a lot of the businesses. We've also got a lot of UDOT planes that are coming in, the military from Nellis, and not quite as often as we'd like, but they do come in, and Fish and Game. They do a lot of crop dusting and a lot of planting for the BLM. We also have Classic Air Medical, which is based out of Kanab, or which has a helicopter based out of Kanab. They do a lot of flights in the area.
So how does an airport make money?
Most general aviation airports are black holes. You know, they take a lot more to run than what they produce.
So the dollars have to mostly come from local funding, state grants, and a lot of money from the FAA, which bases the allocation to each airport on the landings and takeoffs, and by the number of commercial passengers departing. But the local airports do have some cash flow.
We offset the cost of the airport through hangar rentals and anything else that we can do to take care of the public. Fuel cells, of course, is, you know, our 90%. Basically everything but roll out the red carpet, and maybe that's something we need to start doing too.
Well, that gives you an idea of the landscape of airports across the state of Utah. Now let's talk about some of the problems, the challenges, and the ways that they cope to keep air service coming to the 4 corners of the state. We'll be back with the county seat with our panel of guests in just a minute.
Tucked away just outside of Cedar City, Utah, are 2 of southern Utah's best-kept secrets, Canaraville Falls and Kolob Canyons. The rare scenic views create beautiful backdrops to capture the perfect selfie. Get your selfie to Canaraville Falls or Kolob Canyons and get in on one of Utah's best-kept secrets. Go to visitcedarcity.com and access your adventure.
There is a place where looking out means looking in, where an impression lasting only a few seconds will be imprinted on a life forever, where courage is forged and innocence rediscovered, where remembering is rewarding and forgetting unforgettable. There is a place where truth is felt and where seeing is believing. There is a place.
The Bear Lake Valley is a beautiful, rural, historical, and recreational paradise. The changing of the season makes now a great time to come our way to see the warm colors of fall in contrast with the cool blues of Bear Lake. Visit us in the Bear Lake Valley. Come for the ride, stay for the adventure.
Have you ever wanted to recreate the world around you? Add some excitement, culture, adventure? Well, there's no need to remake the world when that perfect combination already exists. Just remember 4 words. Welcome to Weber County. In Ogden, you'll find everything you're looking for, from the top of Powder Mountain to the restaurants of our revitalized downtown. Ogden, Utah, mountain to metro and everything in between. Visit Ogden.com.
Welcome back to the county seat. Our conversation is about the airport system of municipal and county airports that dot the state. And keep commerce and people moving, and that's going to be the topic of our conversation. Joining us today from the State Office of Aeronautics, which until we started researching the show, Pat, I had no idea existed. We have Pat Morley. We have Judd Hill, who manages the Moab Airport for Grand County, and from Uintah County, Commissioner Mark Raymond. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
So, I guess what we've talked about the fact that we have airports and that they partially self-fund by hangar fees, and usually it's a struggle for them to make ends meet. They get some grants for updates. But I wanted to talk more specifically about the importance of the airport system and how important it is to a community, say like Vernal, to have a functioning airport. What would you do without it?
Well, the importance of the airport cannot be underscored enough. We are expected to provide certain services to our community: law enforcement, education, transportation, roads, maintenance on all those. One of them that people don't recognize is the importance of airports. And so we try very hard to provide airport service, air carrier service to and from the larger airports so that people can get to and from the basin. And recently we have experienced challenges in that area. And so we are trying very hard to restore that air service to Grand County, to the basin, and that is where we're at right now, is restoring that service.
So let me ask a question. If you just decide that some guy comes up and says, yeah, I got a plane, and if people want to charter my plane, I can fly them into Salt Lake from Kanab or from Moab or from anywhere. That doesn't quite work that way, does it?
No, it doesn't. If you want to fly for hire, the FAA has certain rules and regulations in place, particularly Part 135 rules and regulations. And if it's a scheduled airline service, then there's Part 121 rules. But an individual flying a private aircraft cannot hire himself out for commercial service without proper certification from the FAA.
So, but then the airport itself has some requirements too, is that correct?
That is correct. The airport, we maintain business licenses. Every business out there would be established just as anywhere on Main Street. The airport is just as vibrant as Main Street in just about all of these communities.
But you have to make certain that you meet certain FAA requirements. You can't just go throw some lights out there and pave it.
No, the airport definitely has some very specific requirements for lighting or the size of the runway, and that also dictates what kind of aircraft can come into the airport.
And Chad, if I could add, we receive funding from the FAA to help supplement the cost that it creates for the counties and for the state. And so we will ask the FAA to work together with us as a partner, and they'll put an RFP out to provide service to an area. For example, in Vernal, we had an RFP sent out here about a year ago to provide essential air service to the Uintah Basin. And that was granted to Great Lakes Airlines a year ago. And unfortunately, with the new regulations on pilot certification, they were not able to provide that service. I think, and clarify, help me out if you can, but instead of 1,500 hours, they started requiring 3,000 hours for a pilot to be certified. And
not specifically, it's actually 500. It's gone up to 1,500.
Okay.
It was a threefold increase
in
the requirements, but it would be the equivalent of whatever classifications you needed for your particular job. The starting mark all of a sudden tripled overnight.
So guys that were already flying and getting their experience flying some of these small, I guess you'd call them puddle jumper flights, all of a sudden had to go back to school or
continue flying until they gain the necessary experience.
And so the air carrier that we had set up to provide service to the Uintah Basin was no longer able to provide that service because they didn't have enough pilots who met the certification requirements.
All right. Well, this has opened up a whole can of worms, so we've got some questions to follow, but we don't have time to get into them just yet. We're going to take a commercial break here on the County Seat. When we come back, we're going to delve into how pilots certify and how airports set up different classifications and expansions. We'll be right back on the County Seat.
There's a little place on a Utah map where I was raised, where my heart's at, where the sagebrush grows wild mountain high, and the stars come out at night. Oh, there ain't nothing like being raised in the basin with a Ute reservation, skiing starvation, that Duchesne County life.
149 million years in the making, dinosaurs once roamed this land. Now they're found at the Dinosaur National Monument. Let's take you beyond the bones. We call it Dinosaur Land. You'll find it offers adventures and sights not seen anywhere else in the world. Come to Dinosaur Land, Vernal, Utah. You'll want to stay forever. The dinosaurs did.
Along Interstate 70 and Highway 89 is an area that is rich with high mountain peaks, vast forests, lakes, streams, historical sites, and a climate that is perfect for outdoor adventures, no matter what the season. Whether you visit Sevier County to catch one of the many celebrations, experience a country-style county fair, or be part of various concerts, sports, or equestrian events, you will be greeted by local residents with a smile and a welcoming hand. In the center of it all, Sevier County.
Beautiful scene, isn't it? The great wide spaces of the wild, wild West. Hi, I'm Chad Booth, host of At Your Leisure. I'm asking you to support the Blue Ribbon Coalition. Their efforts responsibly preserve access to our public lands. If it were not for the Blue Ribbon Coalition and their efforts, you may not have access to millions of acres of land across the West. This is America's playground, and if we don't do anything, we are going to lose it. Join, participate, and donate. Welcome back to the county seat. We are talking today about the rural airports across the state, and actually, I suppose, even in the urban areas, there are airports that dot all over the state. We were on the discussion of commercial flights and the fact that a change in FAA pilot requirements actually took a whole bunch of pilots that start their careers working with the small airlines out of service. And I didn't quite understand the solution, because you said they can't fly commercial flights anymore. They have to get more airtime. How do they get more airtime as a commercial pilot if they're not flying passengers? Would you want to take that one on, Pat?
Well, many of the pilots will actually continue flying privately on their own dime, and others will go out and do flight instructing. And then there are some smaller operators that will allow them to come on and build some experience as first officers. But it's very difficult to fly for a scheduled 121 carrier unless you have the minimum 1,500 hours and an air transport pilot's or an ATP license.
So I don't understand how you make that work in the private, because if you just go out and get the hours on your own, they don't care whether you're flying commercially or not. They just want you to fly.
Get the hours, correct.
And just the hours, yeah.
Just the hours. And that's part of the discussion. The question is hours sufficient to qualify someone with the necessary experience, or maybe the type of flying they're doing may have more weight?
So if this happened to the air carrier that was providing air service to your two communities, and all of a sudden they couldn't get pilots, how is that going to be different for anybody else? What are you guys going to do?
It's been a nationwide issue. It's definitely not just affecting Moab and Vernal. It's affecting the entire nation. It's one where the whole airline industry is adapting and will continue to adapt over the coming decades. We're talking about an industry that is increasing in age of average pilot, where the number of retirements is outpacing the number of new pilots. So one, it's a great opportunity for an entire new crop of young people to enter aviation, and it's a wonderful field to get into.
A crop or crop duster?
It's a great place to start. Crop dusting, there are a lot of pilots in Moab flying skydiving operations, several of which have gone on to airlines. They're working up with smaller airlines, building more hours to get to the bigger ones.
So do you guys have a solution?
There is a bright light on the horizon, and we have an airline carrier who has submitted a proposal to the FAA to provide service to Moab and Vernal boutique airlines, and we're excited that that has been approved. They're currently working on getting the equipment necessary and the pilots necessary to provide that service, and optimistically they will start around the first part of March.
Well, that's obviously good news, but in the meantime the airports continue to operate. Pat, how many airports across the state? I think there are 46.
We have 46 public use airports.
Public use airports. How many of those airports carry commercial service?
Of the 46 public use airports, 8 currently have certification for commercial service.
So basically, a quarter of those airports are represented right here at this table.
Yes.
Interesting.
That's correct.
So, if that's the case, what are the values to these other airports? I mean, people say, well, geez, everybody's maintaining these airports all over the place. What good are they if there's not commercial service?
Well, the airports play a very important role in our statewide transportation system. So in addition to having roads, you have airports, you also have rail. But many people need to take into account that an aircraft is used by business as a time management tool. And in order to use an airplane, you need an airport. And many of our airports here in Utah, we have classified. We recognize the value that they play in the economic development of the state. And we say for the needs, for example, right now in the Commissioner in the Uinta Basin, the oil and gas industry is very dependent upon airports, Vernal and Roosevelt in particular, in order to bring personnel in, and then oftentimes equipment. You have an oil rig in the field that goes down, and they need to get that rig back up, but they need a part. They're not going to take all day and drive. They're going to fly that part in, because that rig being down is tens of thousands of dollars a day loss. So the use of airports to facilitate travel in a very timely fashion. Such is the case here in the state of Utah. For example, in Salt Lake City, we have the population center, the education centers, the government center, medical centers, along the Wasatch Front. When rural Utah needs to have health clinics, the health department or the University of Utah will not drive down to Blanding. They will fly. If they drive, it's a 6-hour drive, followed by an overnight stay. Then day 2 is the clinic, 8 to 10 hours long, and then second night in a hotel, and day 3 drive home. That's 3 days to perform a clinic, when if they use the aircraft, we can fly down there in 1 hour, do the full clinic, and be back.
Well, that does make a great deal of sense as far as business use goes. How about air ambulance service? Do they have their own airports? Do they operate out of regular airports?
They operate out of the public use airports, and so these public use airports are used for not only business travel, but also for bringing law enforcement activity in there, firefighting activity, life flight activity.
Okay, of all those airports that you have, this has crossed my mind. I've always been under the impression that the Bountiful Sky Park is a private airport.
It is.
So, in that public transportation system that you have, it's not necessarily municipal or county-owned airports. Is that?
That's correct. That's the only airport in the state that's privately owned and public use. It's public use, privately owned, and they also facilitate quite a bit of fuel there, and we collect aviation fuel taxes from that airport.
Do they also get grants from the FAA?
They do. Not from the FAA. Airports, of the 46 public use airports, only 35 of our airports in Utah are eligible for FAA dollars. The remaining 11 airports are not part of the national plan, and they rely upon grants from the state.
In my conversation with the airport manager in Kanab, he called it a black hole that sucks money.
Yes.
How do they cover the cost?
It's true. Airports are not profit generators for an airport sponsor, and the sponsor may be the city or the county or even a private entity. But airports are expenses. And much like the comparison I will give is like a firehouse. A firehouse does not generate revenue for the local municipality either, but it's an essential part of the utilities and services provided by the county or the city.
All right. How do you go about changing your airport? If planes are starting to get bigger, and they're flying more efficiently, and like commercial carriers are trying to move towards bigger aircraft, why then, or how then do you meet that accommodation? What do you do?
Well, that's a process that we are undergoing, and we're about on track with Vernal as well. It can be simplified down to a 3-step process. One, you develop a plan, a master plan, and an airport layout plan. It's your design to go forward with. These are federally funded and state funded projects. They need to have proper environmental oversight. So the next major step is an environmental assessment. And we're actually in the middle of our environmental assessment for Canyonlands Field, Moab's airport, right now. After that's done, then you go with a construction phase. That construction can either be what we are doing, upgrading our current existing runway, or it could be what St. George did several years ago, where they built an entire new airport. But that same general plan of attack happens regardless of the upgrade.
And we are currently upgrading our runway. We're extending the runway so that we can land larger aircraft and be certified as an airport that can land the larger aircraft at our airport. So we're currently in that phase.
You've got the land to do it.
A little bit.
Obviously, St. George was running out of Mesa Top to do much expansion. We're going to take a quick break. I've got a couple other questions that I'm sure some of you would want to ask and are curious about, and we'll continue that on the county seat when we talk about our local airports. We'll be right back.
Kanab, base camp for your southern Utah adventures. You belong in Kanab.
What would you do with an extra day in Utah Valley? Explore the Wasatch Mountains? Snap a family photo at Bridal Veil Falls. Cool off on Utah Lake or the Provo River. No matter what you're searching for, you can find it in Utah Valley. Bring everyone together.
Imagine a unique, breathtaking cascade misting into the deep pool below. A world-renowned national scenic byway that snakes through some of the greatest views in the world. A canyon painted red by the hands of time. A land that brings the Wild West back to life. And it's all in one amazing place. Here's some advice. When visiting Bryce Canyon Country, take your time.
When you buy Utah made and grown.
I'm a Utah's own vegetable grower. I care about the foods I produce.
Because when it comes to quality local foods, I understand the importance of Utah grown and raised.
The jobs that we enjoy are vital because Utah's Own supports our communities.
As a consumer, I look for Utah's Own products because Utah's Own is good for me and it's good for Utah.
Keeping it here at home, Utah's Own.
Welcome back to the county seat. We've been talking about airports today across the state. A couple of unfinished pieces of business. You are involved in a commercial expansion, a bigger runway down in Moab to bring in larger aircraft. And obviously there are several motives. One of them is to be able to bring more passengers in for the great recreation that Grand County has to offer. There seems to be a cost that's associated with bringing in bigger planes. Does the FAA help out with that?
Definitely. The FAA is a major contributor to funding the operations of airports on an annual basis, and they also can help with larger capital improvement projects. With that, we have a large portion of the funding that comes from the FAA, and then we also have significant support from the state and also from our local communities.
Do you have to earn that funding, Mark?
Well, you do, but you do it kind of indirectly by improving the desirability to fly into the area. If you can increase the number of employments to a certain level, then FAA provides a significantly larger amount of funding for your airport.
What is an employment? Sounds kind of like entrapment.
But what? Employment is defined as a paying passenger boarding the aircraft on a scheduled flight.
Okay, so that's somebody leaving your. So if you can get more people to leave town,
yes,
you can actually make more money.
Exactly.
Okay, and is that a significant incentive?
Absolutely. Currently, it's $150,000 a year, but if you can reach the magic 10,000 enplanement mark, then that jumps up to $1 million a year.
Well, that the airport receives, yes.
Wow, that's a big boost. That's in addition to other funding and grants and stuff that they do for upgrades and maintenance?
Yes.
Correct. We need to do competitive grant applications when looking at very large-scale projects, but as long as average year-to-year maintenance, that's where that $150,000 or the $1 million really comes into play, is just the ease of doing general maintenance of your airport.
Okay, so I'm going to frame this in the conversation that I hear on the street, and that happens a lot with this program. So people say, oh yeah, the county spends a whole bunch of money in their budget maintaining the county airport, and it just seemed like a constant drain. And then I hear on the other hand, well, the FAA is making all these grants to help run the airport and fill that black hole. And then all of a sudden I learned that there's a state office of aeronautics through UDOT. What do you guys do?
Well, the Utah Department of Transportation has a division of aeronautics, and our function is to interface with the FAA for project selection and identification of airports within our system to issue FAA grants to those 35 airports. And then we work with the remaining 11 airports to see what their capital improvement needs are and to help them with state grants. We also, in addition to working with individual airport sponsors like Judd and the commissioner here for their airports, we provide air transportation services for state agencies that need to go throughout the state. Because within Utah, we really only have commercial service between Salt Lake and St. George, Salt Lake and Cedar City. That's out of Salt Lake City. Right now. The remaining airports, if you want to, or communities, if you want to serve them, either drive there or you can use a state airplane or a private aircraft.
So you provide service for the governor as well?
Yes, the governor's office only uses the state aircraft about 10% of the time. The other 90% of the time, it's all the other state agencies that need to get out to the remote portions of the state, and so they'll use the aircraft as a time management tool. I'd like to go back and clarify, if I can, real quickly about Moab Airport. What we're doing there is we're widening the runway. We're not lengthening it, we're widening it. And the reason why is because currently the FAA standards require a 100-foot wide runway for the regional jet to fly in and out of. And it's currently 75 feet wide, which is plenty wide for the Brasilia. But since SkyWest is no longer flying the Brasilia, they are flying the regional jets. We need to widen that so we can get the regional jet in and out of there.
Oh, okay. Do you have that problem in Uintah County, or are you wide enough?
We're widening and lengthening our runway.
Okay. Well, that sounds like great projects and a lot of help. Okay, very quick. I got 30 seconds left. One last question. Why does Hanksville look so big? Can you land a commercial jet there?
You could, but not recommended. It's not designed for it. It's not, the runway is not strong enough for it. But from the air, it looks like a nice long piece of asphalt. It's just chip seal right now.
Wow. Okay. Well, that answers that question. Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of The County Seat. Remember, local government is where your life happens. Be involved, be informed, be part of what happens. We'll see you next week on The County Seat. If you'd like to share this video with your friends, well, you do that right here. If you would like to subscribe to our YouTube channel, you do that over here. If you'd like to interact with us on The County Seat, that happens over here. If you want to watch the next episode of The County Seat, you can catch it Saturday night at 11 or Sunday morning at 8:30 on ABC4, Good for Utah.